When playing as the Insatiable Horror, you will choose one attack card and two ability cards. In a 3-player game, you may only take one ability card, and in a 2-player game, the same applies, but you cannot take projectile adhesive or occluded lights. In order to win the game, you have to kill 2 investigators. During setup, you can place your token anywhere on your minimap. Place your revealed card within easy reach of your player board. At the beginning of your turn, remove any noise tokens on the board. Then, place your shadow token on the main board at your current location. It is at this point that you may use your ambush ability. You must do this before taking any other actions or abilities. However, on the first turn, you cannot use ambush, so simply continue your turn. During your turn, you may use each of the abilities on your player board and each of your ability cards only once. As the Insatiable Horror, you are able to move through bright spaces on your turn without being revealed. Simply update your shadow token through each space. In this example, the Horror is going to move through bright space 120. The Horror spends 2 movement to get to this space and then has 2 more movement remaining. Rolling a 3, the Horror continues above the carousel. Note that if you end your movement on a bright space, you will be revealed at the end of your turn. The Horror will now update their shadow token to space 120 on the main board. We will now say it is Lucy's turn, who anticipates our movements and checks the alleyway above the carousel. Since the Horror is now in a bright space on the investigator's turn, they must reveal themselves. At the beginning of the next adversary turn, they will place their shadow marker on their location, removing themselves from the board. In this example, the Horror is going to move 2 spaces away. As we can see here, there is a door 3 spaces away from the Horror, who has the ability to damage doors within 3 spaces of itself. The Horror then finishes their movement, rolling the sprint die as normal and hiding behind the zipper. We will now learn how ambush works at the beginning of the Horror's turn. Here we see Brielle and Lucy having their flashlights both angled in the same direction, leaving a slim corridor without light. This is perfect as the Horror is currently situated on space 206. Per usual, the Horror will place a shadow token on their current space at the beginning of their turn. The Horror can ambush any investigator within 5 spaces, but bright spaces count as 2. As we will demonstrate here, Lucy is 6 spaces away. The first 2 spaces only cost 1, while space 237 and Lucy's space herself are both bright, bumping us up to 6. Brielle, on the other hand, is not so lucky. We use 1 space to get to 205, 3 to 189, and 5 to land on Brielle herself. The adversary will then remove Brielle's flashlight and place her adjacent to themselves. Whenever you move an investigator with ambush, you always remove their flashlight if they have one out. Lastly, Asher is 5 spaces away and has no light for protection. He too will be moved adjacent to the Horror. The adversary now applies their attack card to both adjacent investigators, which is the Bufotoxin card. This is the only time the Horror may use their attack card, unless stated otherwise by special rules. They will give each player a face-down wound and the Bufotoxin condition from the condition deck, along with the mauled condition. Lastly, we will go over how the Insatiable Horror can be beaten by the investigators. Take the reference card, which indicates that the adversary player must take 4 egg sac tokens. During the next 4 adversary turns, they will take an egg sac token and place it on the main board at any point during their turn. Each egg sac must be placed within 3 spaces of themselves. In this example, the adversary will place their first egg sac token on space 124. Moving to the main board, we place the egg sac token on space 124. The investigators may now take an involved action to destroy an egg sac. Jumping on the opportunity, Asher does so right away. Once all 4 egg sac tokens have been destroyed, the adversary takes the enraged condition. The Insatiable Horror reveals themselves and will remain revealed for the rest of the game. Now each investigator can take an involved action when adjacent to the Insatiable Horror. Each time they do, they place a supply token on the player aid card. Once there are 3 supply tokens on the player aid card, the Insatiable Horror has suffered enough damage and retreats. The investigators have won the game. That concludes how to play the Insatiable Horror. Happy hunting.